They just want the assurance that you are trustworthy. These various compliance frameworks should be used to build a much stronger compliance posture to demonstrate that trust. Hey, welcome back to the harmonization series that we're doing here at Risk 360. Today, we're going to be diving into part 2 of this series, which is really around implementation of your harmonized program. We're going to dive into some really cool takeaways that we've learned over the years of doing this, both around your actual control sets and how you might want to think about those, but with a heavy focus on tooling. So I have with me today Alex Sullivan, who can give a quick intro. But if you guys remember, my name is Sawyer Miller. I'm the director of the advisory and assurance practice here at Risk 360. So I've seen pretty much all the harmonization work that we've done as a practice over the years. And Alex is quickly becoming very dangerous with this tool set. So
my name is Alex Sullivan. I'm a senior associate on this team, advisory and assurance. And I like working in a lot of different areas. We do a lot of ISO internal audits. We do SOC 2 work. We do high trust work. Starting to do a lot more 42001 work. Everybody's talking about AI. So we're also positioning ourselves there. So
yeah, just to refresh your memories, this is a 3-part series. Part 1 was focused on the why. So why should you care about this? What is it about harmonization that may or may not benefit you? Who's the appropriate audience for this? What types of companies are going to be concerned with this? Part 2 today is the how. So we've established the rationale. Now let's talk about some hands-on tactics and ways to approach the problem. And part 3 that's coming up will be strategic considerations around harmonization.
Yeah, so if we take a step back, a lot of the main objective that we have here is to sort of establish this unity within our GRC program. A lot of technology organizations, writ large, but also GRC and cybersecurity and risk struggle from the same problem. And that's this sort of disintegration and disparate things going on. Sometimes you know about it, sometimes you don't. So a big part of this has to do with unifying things. A lot of it has to do with the frameworks. Everybody's thinking about different frameworks. They're implementing different frameworks. And what that can lead to is sort of this weird bolt-on environment where you've got all these different things happening separate from each other. You've got maybe AI happening over here, PCI happening over here. You're evaluating risks separately. You've got totally different governance structures. So when we're talking about harmonization, it's not just controls, right? We're also looking at entire governance structures.
Alex, how do companies find themselves in that situation? I mean, you'd think, right, that like naturally you would bolt on and add to your program in a way that's scalable and makes sense. How do these various companies that you've seen find themselves with disparate control sets and separate governance structures that should be working together?
Yeah, a lot of what we see is just the incentives and the pressure. So a lot of compliance pressure comes from sales. It comes from marketing. It comes from trying to differentiate yourself in the market. And so a lot of that leads to like the quickest to market when it comes to getting these frameworks. And it's harder to take a step back and strategically think about, unifying your governance structure, rolling AI into existing management systems that you have. It's a lot harder to do that. It takes some time away from the whirlwind of doing everything, constantly doing everything, to actually think strategically, know? And so a lot of the key outcomes we're looking for here is not only being able to harmonize your current structure, your current GRC structure, your current compliance and risk management frameworks, but also spinning up new ones. So we're looking at scalability here. We're really trying to enable organizations to scale. When you're thinking about adding a new framework to your compliance environment within the company, you shouldn't be stressed out about the administrative aspects of it. How is this going to play with our PCI? How is this going to play with our 27001? The actual harmonization, the integration shouldn't cause you headaches. So,
which is ironic because I think a lot of times that's the most stressful piece. The quote unquote hard part is reading the controls and understanding what evidence you'll need to collect to satisfy that control. But a lot of the folks we've worked with don't have much of a problem there. It's more around how am I going to keep this from turning into a lot more time than I have.
Absolutely. And I mean, as much as you can enable your team to kill multiple birds with one stone, that's the goal here. And you can see we're going to talk about a phased approach. We're going to get into a lot more detail here. It really starts at the top, though. We're looking at building a unified GRC framework through harmonized governance. And a lot of that, it starts with sort of having a cross-functional governance team. You really can't operate in silos from a leadership perspective because that just trickles down. So having a unified governance structure where you're talking about unified people, but also processes. And you'll see we're going to start talking more about policies as well. And we do see quite often when a company goes to get certified in a certain area, they have this policy set to get this certification, and they have that policy set to get that certification. And obviously, this doesn't work super well in practice. You might get that rubber stamp, but operationally, it can be a nightmare. So we're really trying to eliminate all of that. After we talk about policies, we're also going to start thinking about measuring this in an integrated way. So we're going to start thinking about how are we coming up with, and how are we tracking KPIs that are looking at a lot of different things at the same time. And so that all helps with integration as well. And then lastly, those KPIs should all be tied to goals, and the goals should also be unified, should be harmonized. And so starting with the leadership and sort of trickling down into the drivers of the program. How are we measuring it? What are we striving for? What's the point of integrating this new framework into our compliance program? We're going to think about a lot of that when we're implementing these programs.
As we start talking about, I guess, what it takes to build these programs, you'll probably be challenged either yourself or by others to understand, what is the impact of doing this? Why is this worth our time? We're going to sort of step aside for a moment and give you some of our thoughts around this, and give you just some structured ways to communicate to your stakeholders internally why this is a worthwhile exercise. So the first is around risk standardization. So most all of these, especially security frameworks, are centered in and rooted in risk. So if you look at ISO 27001, for example, the chronological order of how you should build that program according to the standard actually starts with risk assessment. You should conduct a risk assessment of your organization and then determine, based on the risks you've identified, what controls are necessary to treat those risks at an acceptable level according to your risk tolerance. So risk standardization is very important, not just for a single framework, but especially for multiple frameworks. The more that you generally understand the risks you're trying to mitigate or treat, the better you're going to be able to apply those across many different frameworks. The other is data migration. So as you're trying to bring on new systems, as you're trying to just do business, right? Businesses change a lot, technologically, especially. I mean, look at nowadays versus 5 years ago. You've got companies who are just totally different in terms of how they're deploying code or how they're making their systems or services available to their customers. Compliance can have a really hard time keeping up with those changes. But if you go about this the right way, it's not going to be so system dependent. You can create your control and evidence structures in a way that makes it a little more agnostic. Also, just the organization hierarchy. So helping you understand how is the business structured from a roles and responsibilities perspective. So forget whether it's CMMC or HIPAA or ISO 27001 or SOC 2. At the end of the day, who is responsible for change management? Right. So those types of insights can help you cut through a lot of the noise when you're trying to get these together and build a cohesive program. And then, of course, I want to highlight especially control alignment. So a lot of times we are victims of the words we write. We spend a ton of time writing down controls and evidence because we're trying to cover every little corner of every detail of every control because that's what we think the auditor is going to do. But I submit to you that the more organized you are and the better you can articulate the narrative of your program and how these controls are aligned and why they meet the standard of whatever given framework is being tested, the more benefit you're going to see from that. So what are some of the impacts you can expect to be able to experience by following some of the steps we're going to lay out here? One is pretty clear cut, hopefully, which is enhanced efficiency. We're helping you do more with less time. That's, I think we're all being challenged with that nowadays, with the advent of AI and all the various things that have come along with that. It's becoming increasingly important to be able to demonstrate that value as a human being, and that requires some pretty heavy efficiencies, especially the more complex your compliance landscape gets. Also, improved accuracy. So again, we believe if you build this right, and we've had clients experience, if you build these harmonized programs right, you're going to actually experience improved accuracy of the articulations of your controls. So, going back to my change management example, you shouldn't be telling the SOC 2 auditor and the ISO auditor two different stories around change management just because the controls are worded slightly different, right? You should be telling them the same story. And so by getting away from this idea of letting the tail wag the dog, as they say, and building a program that you can stand firmly on because you believe and know the business processes we've articulated cover all the compliance needs and requirements we have, you can get away from this reactive mode of trying to explain all of your controls in such detail specific to that standard, and it'll actually enable you to tell a more accurate story of what's really happening behind the scenes, so that if there are gaps or improvements that are needed, those can be worthwhile exercises, and it's not ticky-tacky boxes that weren't checked.
And I know it's super granular, but how amazing is it for everybody if you get the right evidence the first time it's requested?
Absolutely. Yeah, as an auditor, we certainly love that. I can tell you that much. And then the last piece is just stronger compliance, right? At the end of the day, I mean, we do these programs, you kind of alluded to it earlier. A lot of times we do these things out of necessity. We're trying to sell a deal. We've got a big client on the line. We've got existing clients who are now demanding new compliance attestations or certifications, what have you. But at the end of the day, we should be doing, at least part of the reason we're doing this should be because it's the right thing to do. Your stakeholders, be it your clients, end users, data subjects, whatever it may be, healthcare data owners, if you're processing PHI, that type of stuff, they depend on you to do the right thing with their data. They depend on you to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of that. And more, we're getting into other types of compliance, like you mentioned earlier, AI. The 42001 standard, interestingly enough, it's not secure AI. They expect that 27001 or some similar security framework already be in place as a part of your program. That whole standard is around responsible use of AI. It's around defining what are expected or unexpected, and as well as accepted and unacceptable outcomes of the use of AI. It challenges you to think about how our people groups, societies, some of the big grandiose terms it uses, other organizations, how are they affected by your potential use of AI? So at the end of the day, compliance is becoming much more than just a security problem, right? Companies, I think the word that I've used before is trust. Companies want to trust that you are handling their sensitive materials, whether it be data, personnel, decisions you might be making on behalf of data subjects, things like that. They just want the assurance that you are trustworthy. And so these various compliance frameworks should be used to build a much stronger compliance posture to demonstrate that trust at the end of the day.
Yeah, and this is really going to take sort of a step-by-step approach, right? It's really a way of laying the foundation first before you build upon it. And like you mentioned, the ISO frameworks do a great job of outlining this explicitly, but I think it's implicit in a lot of the other frameworks as well, that it all starts with risk. And you can define risk on so many different levels. There can be organizational risks. There can be risks to different levels of your security. There can be risks to your identity program, things like that. What we really think is essential is having a single pane of glass and being able to categorize all these risks and somewhat keep them separate, but view them all together, see how they interplay with each other, and tie them all back to these highest level organizational risks. We're talking about, data breaches or reputational harm, things of that nature. But it's really a matter of being able to define them, categorize them, and tie them together in terms of just this integrated program that we've been talking about. And then after that, you've got metrics, like we talked about earlier, having these KPIs that hit on multiple things. What about KPIs that that are really cross-domain. We can use these different ways of measuring things in one space that also perfectly reflect what's going on in the other space as well. So it's not just security, it's also privacy, it's also responsible development of AI, really all the different compliance things that you're tracking and the risks that you're tracking. You should be able to measure something around these to give you a good indication of where you are. Something that we see sort of as our bread and butter, and we're going to get a little more into the nitty gritty of this in a little bit with our software fullCircle, is this integrated control mapping. And this is where I think compliance leaders will be able to sort of sleep a little easier at night. One thing that we talk a lot about, we take a lot of pride in, is sort of our ability to take all of these framework controls and harmonize them into organizational controls. And it could be that you can spin up a new framework, once you've integrated your governance, but you can spin up a new framework and not actually add that many controls to your organizational control list. We have something that we refer to as our platform intelligence within fullCircle, and we'll show you a little bit about that in a little bit and talk about it more. But essentially, it makes it really easy to ingest new frameworks and to bring them into your compliance landscape. And then lastly, you should be making a lot of your decisions, your security decisions, your privacy decisions with data. Having that in one place, or having a place that points to where all of this is so essential. And if you have one place like fullCircle that can take in a lot of these sort of these evidence requests, but also that can just link to your systems, show you exactly where you need to go to get this, it's so crucial, and it leads to a lot of efficiencies. And so that's sort of more of a tactical thing. Once you've got all this strategic framework laid down, it's sort of a tactical thing that'll save people a lot of time.
As we talk through the tactics of how to harmonize controls, we're going to be pretty introspective, right? We as a team leverage our own platform, fullCircle, to do this. So in some ways, we only live in the fullCircle world. That's not always been the case. We used to do this just in Excel, which is probably like most of you that are listening, how you would have to go about this today. But we've really come a long way with the platform. And so we've gotten to a point where it's really hard for us to talk outside of fullCircle in terms of how you should go about this. But whether you use the tool or not, the concepts are the same. This has been born out of a lot of experience without the tool. So it's cool because I think a lot of providers out there probably start with the software and then back into how to use it to accomplish the goal. We've sort of started with the outcome, what type of conclusion we want to arrive at, and we've done the work manually. And now we've been given this amazing vehicle and tool called fullCircle. So what you're looking at now is actually a view of our program deployer. So you alluded earlier to the idea that you should not be just completely overwhelmed by the administrative side of adding a new framework. If you go and you look at a new control set, sure, you could sit down and spend the 6, 8, 10 hours, whatever it takes to go harmonize those and map those back to your existing controls if you wanted. Is that going to add value to your program? Maybe a little bit, because you will have the opportunity to add in your 2 cents and maybe map something here that might not have been obvious before. But in our experience, 80 to 90% of those control mappings are going to be the same regardless of who does it. We as a consulting team have experienced so many frameworks that we got tired of redoing the work over and over. So we've created platform intelligence, which Alex mentioned earlier. So what you're looking at is the deployer screen. And the idea here is whatever your frameworks are, you'll simply come into our platform and you'll turn on the ones that you want. Behind the scenes, what you've got is a lot of control mappings and intelligence that has come through a lot of blood, sweat, and tears of the consulting team. But it's well-vetted stuff that we rely on as practitioners ourselves. We run a lot of programs on behalf of our clients. We implement a lot of programs on behalf of our clients. We're not just auditing. And so the quality of this stuff has to be there. So going back to that trust factor, I think a lot of people are in the boat, rightfully so, where they're nervous to turn on features that platforms offer around harmonization because they're not sure how much they can trust it, right? They're not sure how well vetted it is. And I'm not telling you that everything we give you straight out of the box is going to be perfect for your environment. It will take some synthesis from you to look over. But our goal here is that we enable you to spend your time doing only what you need to do, not the things that most anyone could do. And so we've done a lot of that legwork for you. And this is not easy stuff. It's taken us years to get this right. But the idea is that you can come into the platform, select the frameworks that you want to turn on, and it's going to actually walk you through, similar to like a Windows installer, which I know most of you have experienced probably more times than you like. But it's going to be a very modernized kind of idea of that installer type flow. And so you're going to select the frameworks you want. And if you have an existing program, this screen is going to show you the new controls that are going to be added. If you're standing up a brand new program, it's going to show you the control coverage you're going to get. And you're not only going to get controls, but you're actually going to get evidence that comes with that. So that right there is a really key piece. A lot of GRC platforms out there can support a lot of frameworks because they can, run your controls through some AI and throw it in their tool and say that it's professionally vetted. But how many of them can actually give you legitimate, auditor vetted evidence requests? Not a lot, right? A lot of people actually go to the auditor to get the request list to go back and reassociate with their harmonized control set. In fullCircle, that's not the case. We have spent an inordinate amount of time creating these evidence requests and ensuring that they meet the standard of whatever framework you're turning on. So if you see the logo of a framework in our platform, you can bet that it's been well vetted, well studied, and there are solid evidence requests that are mapped to those controls that you have access to at your fingertips. I'll liken it to like being a chef, right? I think that we are all experts within our own domain, especially within a company. So if you are the GRC leader within XYZ company, you're going to know that landscape better than any outside party could, ourselves included. You're never going to be able to come to a consultant, for example, and them know more than you do about the context of your organization. But we can give you some recipes to start with, right? So a chef is always going to be able to cater to the tastes of the people they're trying to feed better than any other chef could in their restaurant. You're no different, right? You as the expert are going to have the absolute best take on what should be asked for to meet a control, but you shouldn't have to start from scratch every single time. So we're going to give you a base recipe, one that's pretty well vetted, that's been tested out and tried by a lot of people, not just one we invented in a test kitchen. But we're going to give you that recipe to start with, and we're going to guide you through a process to vet these things and put it within your context. Now, soon, a lot of that will also be done for you. It's gonna take a little bit of time. We're working on some really cool stuff and more to come on that. So I hope you stay tuned. But in the future, you're going to be able to come in here and get a pretty well vetted recipe that may even be tailored to the people you're trying to feed right out of the box. So we're very excited about it. Again, if you've ever gone through this exercise, hopefully you're kind of seeing the power of what this is. We would love to connect with you directly. We'd love to talk through really what this looks like. But just to give you a little bit of that, assurance up front, we're not just throwing software over the fence at our customers and saying, good luck, let us know how it goes, submit some feature requests so we can get better, right? We're in this with you. So you're not in this alone. fullCircle is truly your one-stop shop for GRC harmonization. It's the platform that you can bet is not only going to have the features you need, but it's got the professionals behind it that you can actually consult with. So, similar to like a TurboTax, right? If you're using TurboTax and you've got tax questions, well, you can pay them a little extra money and talk to a CPA, right? Maybe you've got a CPA friend that can help you. Maybe you happen to work with some. But at the end of the day, you've got to do more to get access to that expert. At Risk 360, that's not the case. We've got people who are out there in the field doing exactly what you're having to do day after day, that are building this platform behind the scenes and curating and developing that platform intelligence. All the features we built are, by and large, from requests that have come from the team who have experienced the same problems that you experience. So a couple of takeaways here. We're going to take you through a step-by-step guided implementation process. We're going to ensure that you've got fast adoption of the platform. We have a quick start implementation program that we run right now, where in 4 weeks we get you from nothing to operational. So that's been a really big value add for a lot of our clients. And again, it's not just a templatized sort of context unaware program. In 4 weeks' time, you're going to have a program that it's using your words, it's your evidence requests, it's your system components. It is understood by your control owners. You're not having to re-explain everything that was handed to you by a software company. And on top of that, we're going to provide you with ongoing unlimited support. So we take client experience very serious here. We have a pretty cool business strategy, I think, where we buy into this idea of a flywheel, which has 5 points on it. And the theory, a lot of big businesses have applied this that have been very successful. But the theory is if you get the right points in the flywheel defined, it may take a ton of effort on each and every point to get that thing started. But over time, it gains momentum, and it takes just support and ongoing investment in those points. And one of our points of our 5-point flywheel is raving fans. And so we have a lot of raving fans. We live true to that. And if you're going to use our software, we're going to make sure you're successful and that you're getting the outcomes you want out of it. Because if you're not, that's probably something we need to take back and adjust ourselves. So we're buying into this with you. We're taking ownership of the same outcomes you're trying to get. So I hope you'll give us a shot. If you want to learn more about the platform itself, you can reach out to us on the website. We've got a contact us form. Or if you just want to talk shop. I mean, we love connecting with folks in industry. Alex here's got nothing but time. He's hardly doing anything else. No, I'm kidding. We're obviously busy like you are, but again, we do want to connect with folks in industry and understand the problems that you're facing. And so, I hope this has been helpful. Again, if you're not a fullCircle customer, if you're not going to be able to be a fullCircle customer, maybe you've got another platform or something that you're not going to be able to get away from. We understand. But at the end of the day, we hope that you have an understanding of the features that are out there so that you can either push your provider to give you what you need, or you can at least take away from this some concepts that you can go back and tactically apply to your program to ultimately harmonize it and gain access to some of those impacts and benefits we called out earlier. So thanks for your time. We really appreciate it. We hope you'll stay tuned for part 3 of our series.